Confessions of a Book Sniffer. My name is Frank and I am a book sniffer. I used to be a closet sniffer, like most of you here, but one day I got tired of living a lie. My story is probably not that different from anyone else in this room. Right from way back in my adolescence, I would sniff new books that I'd just bought. It never occurred to me that I had a problem, but there were telltale signs such as making sure that the shop assistant wrapped any book I bought in brown paper and then creeping up the stairs to my bedroom and checking the door was locked. Occasionally, the door handle used to turn as my dad tried to get in. He never said anything until one day he shouted through the door, "It'll make you go blind." "Dad," I said, "I'm only masturbating." "Oh, all right, I thought you were doing something else. You keep going up to your room with those packages, and I thought you were, well, you know." "A book sniffer, Dad? How could you?" "I'll not have any son of mine being one of them." So you see, right from the beginning, I vaguely felt that something was wrong. But I digress. So let's get back to what I used to do with books. It's funny, I can say that now, right in front of you all, but there was a time I would be so ashamed, like when my mate caught me sniffing his Spider-Man comic. "You perv," he said. "I might just understand if you were sniffing a comic with some tasty babe like Psylocke. Christ, I'd sniff her picture if I was into that sniff shit. But Spider-Man? Geez, are you sick or something?" Sorry, I've gone off track again. However, I see some of you are smiling knowingly, so I guess I'm not the only one that got caught in flagranti librum. The upshot was that my so-called best mate never spoke to me again, but at least he told no one else, which leads me to suspect that he too was a sniffer. But in his confusion, he thought that the gender of the people in comics that were being sniffed determined your sexual orientation, which is fine for comics, but hardly translates into books that are not comics. Okay, I'll get back to my story, as I see some of you yawning. When I was safe in my bedroom, I opened the book with trembling hands. The anticipation was almost as good as the act. First, I'd stroke the cover, feel its texture and thickness. I usually went for hardbacks, because there's something a bit impotent about softbacks. Stroking them seems pointless. What happened after that sniff depended on my mood. If I was desperate, I'd abandon any foreplay, even to the point of just diving in and snuffling pages like a man who'd never sniffed a book in his life. But most times I built up to it. Stroking, looking at the book from different angles, imagining what it would smell like, trying to guess the number of pages, etc. You book sniffers know what I'm talking about. Then it was down to business. Sometimes I would sniff at random, other times I would sniff every 20th page, and so on. Each ritual brought its own delicious frisson. I went to great lengths to hide my guilty secret, like making sure that I washed my nose after sniffing cheap print. I'm embarrassed to say that as I see looks of horror on some of your faces, but you see, that's how low I sunk. Yes, I'm going to say it. I used to sniff tabloids, but only if I couldn't afford to buy decent books. My favorite kind of paper is artwork print. You know, that glossy paper which has a distinctive smell, but like anything classy, costs a lot. So I lived in fear, because I felt that no one liked what I liked, until someone else confessed that they were also a book sniffer. He could hardly deny it, as I caught him in the library, nose deep in a rather used and tatty book, eyes glazed with ecstasy. "You pervert," I yelled. "You have no idea where that book has been." He blushed and was close to tears. I felt a stab of guilt. I was being no better than my former mate. "It's okay," I said. "There's nothing wrong with book sniffing. but you just have to be careful these days. Be safe. He brightened up. I usually sniff new books, he said, but I had no money on me and I was feeling in the mood. Okay, I was desperate. So I came here. I just had to get my nose into some book. Any book. I smiled. I'm a sniffer too. It's okay. I understand, but just remember, virgin books not only smell better, but are a damn sight safer. He perked up at that. Let's have a coffee, I said. I know somewhere that's both a coffee shop and sells books. After our coffee, we went on the prowl. We couldn't keep our hands off those virgin books, and we shared and compared experiences. He even wanted me to sniff and share a book with him, but I thought that was a bit gay. I told him that I loved the smell of fancy glossy artwork paper, and he said I was too posh. He liked comics. I joked and said that was not surprising, considering he haunted CD libraries. Slowly, over the years, I discovered other secret sniffers. Sometimes you just knew. One beetle can tell another, as the old Irish saying goes. Quite often the signs were obvious. The businessman with his face too close to the Financial Times and the telltale smudge on his nose. The furtive book sniffer in the shop looking round first to check if the security guard was watching, and if not, a quick desperate sniff into a book. That's why I always bought a book that was right at the back of the shelf. I didn't want to sniff where someone else had poked their nose. I mean, it's only a matter of time before some virus takes advantage and spreads. Can you imagine having some sort of horrible weeping sore on your nose and people looking knowingly at you? But I knew that all this had to stop, even though I wasn't harming anyone and it was consensual. Have you ever heard a book complain of nasal assault? Joking aside, I knew it was taking over my life. It just wasn't the odd book, and once a book was properly sniffed, it lost its charm. I never really got into newspapers or comics. They weren't my scene. Only virgin and preferably hardback books would do. Eventually, my wife threw me out because there were books everywhere. She said it was only a matter of time before I appeared on one of those TV hoarder programs, and she wasn't going to have the neighbours sniggering at her, and either the books went or she did. Of course, it was no contest. And after a generous divorce settlement, she left. It was only then I finally admitted I had a problem. Books do not cook your meals, and you can't have sex with books. Well, I suppose you can, but my relationship with books wasn't in that way. What I felt while sniffing was more intense than any mind-blowing orgasm. I know I was out of control. Addicted, if you like, and that's why I came here. And I thank you for showing me that there's an alternative to book sniffing. The group looked at me and applauded. I gazed down at my Kindle electronic reader. No, it wasn't the same. It would never be the same. I can read in that contraption all the great books of the world, but I can't sniff a cold, hard, soulless electronic book reader. I'm a recovering book sniffer, but everywhere there are bookshops, and every time a door of that shop opens, the aroma beckons. I guess alkies have the same problem passing a pub. Yes, I know, I'll always be a book sniffer, even if I never sniff a book again.